The security guard's radio crackled at 3 in the morning. But Sofia Martinez didn't need the warning. She could already see the light blazing from the executive suite on the 47th floor, the only illuminated window in the entire downtown skyline. She pushed her cleaning cart toward the private elevator, wondering which workaholic executive had decided to pull an all-nighter this time. In the 2 years she'd worked the graveyard shift at Meridian Tower, she'd seen plenty of ambitious souls grinding away at ungodly hours, but the penthouse level was usually empty by midnight. Those offices belonged to the real power players, the ones who delegated their late nights to underlings. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the sleeping city below. Sofia wheeled her cart down the silent hallway, her footsteps muffled by plush carpet, until she reached the corner office. The door stood slightly ajar, warm light spilling into the darkened corridor. "Hello," she called softly, knocking on the doorframe. "Cleaning service." "Come in," a deep voice responded, and she detected a weariness that went beyond simple fatigue. Sofia pushed the door open and found herself facing a man who didn't match her expectations at all. He sat behind an enormous desk, cluttered with architectural drawings and scale models, his sleeves rolled up and his tie discarded somewhere hours ago. Silver threaded through his dark hair, and lines creased the corners of his eyes. But there was something magnetic about his presence that had nothing to do with the expensive watch on his wrist, or the tailored shirt that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "I can come back," Sofia offered, already starting to retreat. "No, please." He straightened, rolling his shoulders as if trying to work out days' worth of tension. "I could use the company, actually. Just ignore me while you work." She hesitated, then wheeled her cart inside. The office was stunning, all dark wood and leather, with an entire wall dedicated to architectural renderings of buildings she recognized from around the city. Another wall displayed framed magazine covers and awards, and she caught the name before looking away. Oliver Zimmerman, CEO and founder of Zimmerman Development Group. "You're here late," Sofia said, then immediately wondered if she'd overstepped. Small talk with executives wasn't exactly in her job description, but Oliver just laughed, a warm sound that seemed to surprise even him. "I could say the same about you. This is my normal shift." She began emptying the waste paper baskets, moving with practiced efficiency. 3 to 11, Monday through Friday. "That's brutal. It pays the bills." Sofia glanced at him, noting the way his shoulders slumped despite his attempt to maintain proper posture. "You look like you've been here for a while. 72 hours, give or take." He rubbed his face with both hands. "There's a development deal that's falling apart and I'm trying to salvage it before the board meeting tomorrow, today, whatever day it is now." "Thursday," Sofia supplied helpfully. She moved to dust the bookshelves, genuinely curious about the titles. Most were related to architecture and urban planning, but she spotted several novels wedged between the professional texts. "Have you eaten anything?" Oliver blinked at her as if the question had never occurred to him. "I'm not sure." She shook her head and reached into her cart, pulling out the insulated lunch bag she always brought from home. "Here." She set a container on the edge of his desk, along with a fork wrapped in a napkin. "Chicken and rice. My abuela's recipe. You need food if you're going to function." He stared at the container like she'd just performed a magic trick. "I can't take your dinner. Lunch, technically. And yes, you can. I always pack extra." That wasn't entirely true, but something about the lost look in his eyes made her want to help. "Eat." Oliver opened the container slowly, and the aroma of cumin and cilantro filled the office. He took a tentative bite, then another, and Sofia watched his expression shift from polite obligation to genuine appreciation. "This is incredible," he said, and the exhaustion in his voice lifted slightly. "Thank you. Really. You're welcome." She returned to her work, wiping down surfaces and straightening the chaos of papers as much as she dared. They fell into a comfortable silence broken only by the hum of the ventilation system and the distant sounds of the city below. "Can I ask you something?" Oliver said after a while. "Why the night shift? Seems like it would be isolating." Sofia considered the question while she cleaned the windows. "I'm taking classes during the day. Business administration at the community college. The night shift lets me go to school and still make rent." "That's ambitious. That's life." She smiled at him over her shoulder. "Not all of us start at the top." Instead of taking offense, Oliver laughed again, and Sofia found herself liking the sound. "Fair point. I was working construction when I was your age, convinced I'd never see the inside of an office except to clean it." He paused. "How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?" 24, you? 47. He said it matter-of-factly, but she detected something underneath a question he wasn't quite asking. "That's not old," Sofia said. "My dad's 52 and he still plays soccer every weekend. Maybe not old, but certainly older." Oliver set down his fork, the container now empty. "That was exactly what I needed. Thank you. Glad I could help." Sofia finished her tasks and prepared to move on to the next office. "You should go home and sleep before your meeting." "I should," he agreed, but made no move to leave. "Will you be here tomorrow night? Same time, same place." "Good." The word held more warmth than seemed necessary for such a simple statement. Sofia left feeling oddly energized despite the late hour, and she found herself thinking about Oliver Zimmerman's tired smile and kind eyes throughout the rest of her shift. The next night, his office was dark and empty. Sofia told herself the disappointment she felt was ridiculous. He was a CEO with a massive company to run, not someone who'd be working late every night just because she happened to clean his office. She went about her duties efficiently, trying not to feel let down. But on Monday, the light was on again. This time Oliver looked better, more rested, though still worn around the edges. He glanced up when she knocked, and his face brightened in a way that made her heart skip unexpectedly. "Sofia," he said, like her name was something worth remembering. "How was your weekend?" They fell into a routine after that. Not every night, but often enough that Sofia started looking forward to those encounters more than was probably wise. Oliver would work while she cleaned, but they'd talk, sharing pieces of their lives in the strange intimacy of 3 a.m. conversations. She learned he'd been married once, years ago, and the divorce had been amicable but final. He'd thrown himself into building his company afterward, letting work consume everything else. He had a younger sister who worried about him constantly, and a niece who was starting college in the fall. He learned that Sofia was the oldest of 3, that her parents had immigrated from Mexico before she was born, and that she was determined to build something meaningful with her life, even if it took longer than the traditional path. She told him about her classes, her dreams of maybe starting her own business someday, and the way her grandmother's advice always seemed to appear in her head at crucial moments. "What would your abuela say about you feeding strangers in office buildings?" Oliver asked one night, amusement dancing in his dark eyes. "She'd say everyone deserves kindness and you can't think properly on an empty stomach." Sofia grinned. "Plus, you're not a stranger anymore." "No, I suppose not." He leaned back in his chair, studying her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What would she say about us becoming friends?" The word friends seemed inadequate for what was developing between them, but Sofia didn't know what else to call it. She'd probably ask why a CEO wants to be friends with his cleaning lady. Because you're brilliant and funny and completely unimpressed by things that impress most people. Oliver's voice was serious now. Because you see me as a person, not a bank account or a business connection. That's rare. Sofia's breath caught. Oliver, I know, he said quickly. I know this is complicated, the age difference, our positions, everything. I'm not trying to put you in an awkward situation. You're not. She moved closer to his desk, drawn by something she didn't want to resist anymore. I like talking to you. I like seeing you. And yeah, maybe it's complicated, but not for the reasons you think. Then what reasons? Because I keep finding excuses to spend extra time in your office. Because I started caring about whether you eat and sleep and take care of yourself. Because when I saw your office was empty last week, I felt genuinely disappointed. The words tumbled out before she could second-guess them. Because you're 47 and incredibly successful, and I'm 24 and cleaning offices, and that gap feels huge even though I don't want it to matter. Oliver stood and walked around his desk until only a few feet separated them. For what it's worth, that gap doesn't matter to me. Not the age, not our positions, none of it. When I talk to you, I feel more myself than I have in years. That's terrifying, Sofia whispered, completely. He smiled, and she saw vulnerability there alongside the confidence he usually projected, but also potentially wonderful. They stood there in the quiet office, the city sparkling below them, and Sofia felt the moment stretch into something significant. This wasn't just late-night conversations anymore. This was standing on the edge of something real. I should finish my shift, she said finally, but she didn't move. You should, Oliver agreed, not moving either. This is a terrible idea, probably. I don't date people I meet at work. Very sensible policy. Oliver. His name felt different now, weighted with possibility. Have coffee with me, he said. Not here, not during work hours. Saturday morning, somewhere neutral. Just coffee, and we can figure out if this is just unusual circumstances or something worth exploring. Every practical bone in Sofia's body screamed that this was a mistake. The age gap alone would raise eyebrows, never mind the professional complications. But when she looked at Oliver, really looked at him, she saw someone who made her laugh, who listened when she talked about her dreams, who treated her like an equal despite the vast differences in their circumstances. Okay, she said. Coffee. His smile could have powered the entire building. They met at a small cafe in a neighborhood that belonged to neither of them. Neutral territory, where they could just be Oliver and Sofia, rather than CEO and employee. He arrived first, casually dressed in jeans and a dark sweater that made him look younger somehow, less intimidating than he did in his office, surrounded by the trappings of success. Sofia had agonized over what to wear before settling on her favorite sundress and a denim jacket, wanting to look nice but not like she'd tried too hard. When Oliver saw her, his expression made all the deliberation worthwhile. Hi, he said, standing as she approached. Hi yourself. They ordered coffee and pastries, then claimed a table by the window where morning light poured over them like a blessing. Without the office setting and the middle-of-the-night timing, Sofia half expected the easy connection between them to evaporate. Instead, conversation flowed even more naturally. Tell me something about yourself that I don't know, Oliver said, wrapping his hands around his coffee cup. Something that has nothing to do with work or school. Sofia thought for a moment. I sing. Not professionally or anything, but I've been in my church choir since I was 8. It's my favorite thing, that moment when all the voices come together and create something bigger than the individual parts. I'd love to hear you sometime. Your turn. Tell me something real. Oliver gazed out the window, his profile etched against the bright morning. I'm lonely. he said quietly. I built this enormous company, achieved everything I thought I wanted, and somewhere along the way I forgot to build a life. Most nights I work until exhaustion forces me to stop. Before I met you, I couldn't remember the last time I had a genuine conversation that wasn't about business. The honesty in his words made her chest ache. That sounds exhausting. It was. He turned back to her, and the intensity in his dark eyes made her pulse quicken. And then you showed up with your grandmother's chicken and rice and treated me like a human being instead of a title. Everything shifted. I didn't do anything special. You did, though. You saw someone who needed help and you helped, no agenda, no expectations. You know how rare that is. Sofia reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. The age thing really doesn't bother you. People are going to have opinions. Let them. Oliver turned his hand over, lacing their fingers together. Sofia, I spent my 20s working myself half to death to prove I was worth something. I spent my 30s and most of my 40s building an empire because I thought that would fill the emptiness. I'm not going to spend whatever comes next worrying about what other people think. Not when I've finally found someone who makes me want to actually live instead of just exist. That's a lot of pressure to put on Coffee, she said, trying to lighten the moment even as emotion swelled in her throat. He laughed. Fair, how about this? I really like you. I'd like to keep seeing you officially and figure out where this goes. No pressure, no expectations beyond wanting to spend more time together. What do you think? What she thought was that this was crazy and wonderful and terrifying all at once. What she thought was that the 23-year age gap should matter more than it seemed to. What she thought was that when Oliver looked at her like she was precious, she felt braver than she had any right to feel. I think I'd like that too, Sofia said. They stayed at the cafe until mid-afternoon, talking and laughing and discovering all the ways they fit together despite the obvious differences. Oliver told her about his early days in construction, learning trades and studying architecture at night. She shared her plans to open her own consulting firm eventually, helping small businesses with organization and growth strategies. When they finally left, Oliver walked her to the bus stop despite her protests that he didn't need to. Can I take you to dinner next week? He asked. Somewhere nice. Let me do this properly. You don't need to impress me with expensive restaurants. I know. But I want to. I want to take you somewhere beautiful and watch you experience it because I think you'll notice details everyone else misses and point out things I've stopped seeing. Humor me. How could she say no to that? Their first real date was everything Oliver had promised. He took her to a rooftop restaurant with a view that stretched for miles, and Sofia spent the first 10 minutes just absorbing the sight of the city spread out below them like a blanket of lights. Oliver watched her with obvious pleasure, and when she caught him staring, he didn't look away. What? She asked, smiling. You, he said simply. You look at the world like it's full of magic. It is if you pay attention. Over courses of food that were more art than sustenance, they continued the process of revealing themselves to each other. Oliver told her about the development deal he'd been struggling with the night they met. He'd saved it, but it had required some creative compromises. Sofia shared her nervousness about an upcoming presentation in her marketing class. You'll be brilliant, Oliver said with complete certainty. You don't know that. Yes, I do. I've heard you talk about business strategies at 3 in the morning. You have insights that would impress my entire executive team. The confidence in his voice made her believe it might be true. As the evening wore on, Sofia became aware of the looks they were getting from other diners. Some were simply curious, but others carried judgment she recognized all too well. Oliver seemed oblivious, his attention focused entirely on her, but Sofia felt the weight of those stares. People are watching us, she said quietly. Oliver glanced around as if noticing for the first time, then shrugged. Let them watch. I'm having dinner with a beautiful, intelligent woman who I'm completely captivated by. They're probably jealous. Or they're wondering what a man your age is doing with someone my age. Sofia. He reached across the table and took her hand. Look at me. I don't care about their assumptions or judgments. The only opinions that matter here are yours and mine. Do you want to leave? She considered it, then realized she didn't. She was having too good a time to let strangers' opinions ruin the evening. No, I want dessert. His grin was pure delight. That's my girl. The possessiveness in those words sent warmth flooding through her. Over the next few months, they built something that felt solid despite its unconventional foundation. Oliver made sure their relationship didn't affect her job, even going so far as to have his office added to a different cleaning rotation, so there was no appearance of impropriety. They kept things quiet at first, both because Sofia wanted to be sure this was real, and because Oliver wanted to protect her from any potential fallout. But gradually, carefully, they let their lives intertwine. Oliver met her family on a Sunday afternoon, showing up at her parents' house with flowers for her mother and genuine curiosity about her father's work as an electrician. Sofia had worried about how the age gap would play with her traditional parents, but Oliver's respectful manner and obvious affection for their daughter won them over. Her father took him out back to look at a project he was working on, and when they came back an hour later they were talking like old friends. I like him, her mother whispered while they cleared plates. He looks at you like you hung the moon. Mama, don't you think he's too old for me? Her mother considered this seriously. I think age is just a number when the hearts match. Your father is 7 years older than me, and people had opinions about that too. What matters is how he treats you and whether he supports your dreams. He does, Sofia said. He really does. And it was true. Oliver encouraged her education, often quizzing her about her classes and offering real-world examples from his own business experience. When she mentioned wanting to attend a weekend workshop but not being able to afford it, he simply handed her his credit card and told her to consider it an investment in her future. She tried to refuse, but he'd been adamant. Let me help, he'd said. Not because I don't think you can do it yourself, but because I can make this easier for you and I want to. Let someone support you for once. Sofia had cried, overwhelmed by the generosity and the feeling of being genuinely cared for. She met his sister Rebecca at a gallery opening, bracing herself for disapproval. Instead, Rebecca hugged her immediately and whispered, "Thank God. I was starting to think my brother had forgotten how to be happy." "He makes me happy too," Sofia had whispered back. "Obviously. I haven't seen him smile this much in years. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." The real test came when Oliver's business partner Marcus found out about the relationship. Marcus was protective of Oliver and the company, and he didn't hide his concerns. "She's half your age," Marcus said bluntly, apparently not caring that Sofia could hear him from where she stood on Oliver's apartment balcony. What happens when she realizes what she's missing out on? When her friends are all partying and traveling and she's stuck with a middle-aged workaholic? "Marcus, that's enough." Oliver's voice held steel. "I'm serious. I don't want to see you get hurt." Sofia walked back inside, meeting Marcus's surprised look with calm directness. "I appreciate your concern for Oliver. He's lucky to have friends who care about him. But you're making some pretty big assumptions about me. Such as assuming I don't know my own mind, or that age automatically determines compatibility, or that I'm with Oliver for anything other than the fact that he's kind and intelligent and treats me like an equal partner." She moved to stand beside Oliver, feeling his hand settle on her waist. "I'm not some naive girl looking for a father figure, and he's not some creep preying on youth. We're two adults who found something real together. You can accept that or not, but you don't get to make choices for us." Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then his stern expression cracked into a smile. "Okay, I like her." Oliver laughed, tension draining from his shoulders. "Yeah, me too." They navigated challenges as they arose. Sofia dealt with snide comments from a few classmates who somehow found out she was dating a millionaire CEO. Oliver fielded questions from board members who worried about appearances. But they faced these obstacles together, learning to communicate openly about fears and insecurities. "Do you ever wish I was older?" Oliver asked one night as they lay tangled together on his couch, a movie playing forgotten on the television. More established, on the same level professionally, Sofia tilted her head to look at him. "Do you ever wish I was younger? Less ambitious, content to just be arm candy?" "God, no." "Then there's your answer. I don't want you to be anything other than exactly who you are." She kissed his jaw. "Besides, you're going to be incredibly hot when you're 60 and I'm 37. Just imagine all the jealous looks I'll get." He laughed and pulled her closer. "I love you." The words hung in the air between them, the first time either had said them out loud. Sofia's heart hammered against her ribs. "I love you too," she whispered. "So much it scares me sometimes." "Me too, but it's a good scared, right?" "The best scared." They made love that night with new tenderness, the words changing something fundamental between them. This wasn't just dating anymore, wasn't just seeing where things went. This was commitment, partnership, the deliberate choice to build a future together. A year into their relationship, Sofia graduated with her associate degree. Oliver sat in the audience with her entire family, cheering louder than anyone when she walked across the stage. Afterward, he took them all to dinner at the same rooftop restaurant where they'd had their first date. "I'm so proud of you," he murmured while her family laughed and celebrated around them. "And this is just the beginning." "I've been thinking about that," Sofia said. "About beginnings and futures and what I want next." "Tell me." "I want to start my business. Not 5 years from now, but soon. I want to take everything I've learned and put it into practice." She took a deep breath. "And I want to do it without your money." Oliver pulled back slightly, studying her face. "Because you think I'd hold it over you?" "No, because I need to know I can do it myself. I need to build something that's entirely mine, not because I don't appreciate your support, but because this is important to me." She gripped his hand. "Please understand." "I do." He kissed her forehead. "But let me help in other ways. Connections, advice, being a sounding board when you need one. Let me be your partner in this. Deal?" She started her consulting business in a tiny shared office space, taking on small clients and building her reputation slowly. Oliver kept his promise, offering guidance without trying to take over, celebrating her wins and helping her learn from setbacks. It was hard work. Long hours added on top of the night shift. She still worked to pay her bills. But Sofia had never felt more alive. 2 years into their relationship, Oliver took her back to that same cafe where they'd had their first official date. Sofia suspected something was up when he seemed unusually nervous, fidgeting with his coffee cup and struggling to maintain eye contact. "You're freaking me out," she said, laughing. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right actually, which is why I'm nervous." He took a deep breath. "Sofia, when I met you, I was going through the motions of life without really living. You changed that. You changed everything." "Oliver, let me finish before I lose my courage." He smiled shakily. "You've taught me that age is just a number, that real connection transcends circumstances, and that love doesn't follow a schedule or care about what's convenient. I wake up every morning grateful that you chose me, that you saw past everything superficial to who I actually am." He slid out of his chair and dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. Around them, the cafe went silent. "Sofia Martinez, will you marry me?" The ring was perfect, a simple band with 3 small stones that caught the light like captured stars. Sofia looked at Oliver's hopeful face, at this man who had shown her what it meant to be truly seen and valued, and felt joy burst through her chest. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at once. "Yes, absolutely yes." The cafe erupted in applause as Oliver stood and pulled her into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed against his shoulder. When he finally set her down and slipped the ring onto her finger, Sofia felt like the world had shifted into sharp focus. They were married 6 months later in her family's church, with her grandmother beaming from the front row and Oliver's sister serving as best woman. The ceremony was bilingual, blending both their traditions, and when Sofia walked down the aisle in her grandmother's restored wedding dress, Oliver's eyes filled with tears. "You're so beautiful," he whispered when she reached him. "You're not so bad yourself." The priest smiled at them. "Shall we begin?" They spoke their vows in front of everyone who mattered, promising to love and support each other through whatever came. When Oliver kissed her, Sofia felt the rightness of it down to her bones. This was her partner, her equal, her future. The reception was loud and joyful, with dancing that went on until midnight. Sofia's father gave a speech that made everyone cry, talking about how Oliver had proven himself through his actions and devotion. Rebecca told embarrassing stories about Oliver's younger days that had everyone howling with laughter. When they finally escaped to Oliver's car, decorated with cans and streamers courtesy of Sofia's younger siblings, she felt giddy with happiness and possibility. "Mrs. Zimmerman," Oliver said, testing out the name. "I'm keeping Martinez professionally," she reminded him, "but I like the way you say it. Mrs. Martinez Zimmerman. Perfect." They honeymooned in Spain, spending 2 weeks exploring cities and beaches, eating incredible food and making love in gorgeous hotels. Oliver insisted on making every moment special, but Sofia's favorite times were the quiet one's morning coffee on their balcony, walking hand in hand through ancient streets, falling asleep tangled together with the sound of the ocean through the windows. "Thank you," she said one morning while they watched the sunrise over Barcelona. "For what? For never making me feel like the age difference mattered. For treating me like an equal partner instead of someone you had to take care of or protect from the world." Oliver pulled her close. "Sofia, you're the strongest person I know. You were supporting your family, putting yourself through school, and building a business all at the same time. I never wanted to protect you from the world. I just wanted to be by your side while you conquered it. I love you so much. I love you too. More than I knew it was possible to love someone." They returned home to their shared life, settling into new rhythms as husband and wife. Sofia's business continued to grow, and she eventually quit her night shift at Meridian Tower, though she never forgot where she'd come from. Oliver scaled back his workload slightly, determined to maintain better balance between career and personal life. 3 years into their marriage, Sofia found out she was pregnant. She sat on their bathroom floor staring at the positive test, overwhelmed with joy and terror in equal measure. When Oliver came home from work and found her there, he immediately dropped to his knees beside her. "What's wrong?" She handed him the test wordlessly. Oliver stared at it for a long moment, then looked at her with wonder in his eyes. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." Sofia laughed shakily. "Are we crazy? You're 52, I'm 29, we're both so busy with work. We're having a baby," Oliver repeated, and this time it was pure celebration. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was infinitely precious. "We're going to be parents." "You're going to be an old dad," she teased through her tears. "Distinguished, please. I prefer distinguished, Dad." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "This is the best news, the absolute best." The pregnancy wasn't easy, but Oliver was there for every moment, every morning sickness episode, every midnight craving, every doctor's appointment. He read parenting books and assembled furniture and painted the nursery himself, wanting everything to be perfect for their daughter. Emma Rose Zimmerman arrived on a snowy March morning, screaming her indignation at the world. Oliver cried when they placed her in his arms, staring down at the tiny face with absolute devotion. "She's perfect," he breathed. "Sofia, she's perfect." "We made a person," Sofia said, exhausted and elated. "How is that even possible?" Watching Oliver with their daughter healed something in Sofia she hadn't known needed healing. He was patient and gentle, completely unafraid of diapers or middle-of-the-night feedings. When Emma cried, he'd walk her around their apartment, singing off key lullabies and telling her stories about her mama's bravery and strength. Sofia's business continued to thrive, and she found ways to work from home part-time while Emma was small. Oliver restructured his schedule to be home by 6 every evening, unwilling to miss bath time or bedtime stories. They figured it out together, stumbling through exhaustion and dirty diapers and the overwhelming love that came with parenthood. On Emma's first birthday, they threw a party that brought together both sides of their family. Sofia watched her father teach Oliver's sister a traditional dance while her mother showed Oliver's niece how to make tamales. Emma sat in her high chair, cake smeared across her face, giggling at all the attention. "Look at this," Oliver said, coming to stand beside Sofia. "Look at what we built." She leaned into him, feeling his arm settle around her waist. "Not bad for a CEO and his cleaning lady." "Former cleaning lady, current business owner, and permanent love of my life," he corrected. "Get it right. I love you, old man." "I love you too, youngster." He kissed her temple. "Think we should give Emma a sibling?" Sofia turned to look at him, seeing the hope and happiness in his face. "You want another baby? I want everything with you. More babies, more years, more adventures, all of it." His expression turned serious. "I know we didn't follow a traditional timeline and people had their doubts about the age gap, but I've never regretted a single moment." "You're my everything, Sofia." Tears pricked her eyes. "You're mine too. And yes, I think Emma would love a little brother or sister." Yeah. Their son, Gabriel, arrived 2 years later and their family felt complete. Life was chaotic with 2 small children and 2 busy careers, but it was a beautiful chaos filled with love and laughter. Oliver proved to be the kind of father who showed up for every recital, every soccer game, every school event. Sofia built her consulting firm into something significant, eventually hiring employees and taking on bigger clients. The age gap that had once seemed so significant faded into irrelevance. They were just Oliver and Sofia, partners in every sense of the word, building a life that honored both their dreams. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they returned to that cafe where Oliver had proposed. It looked exactly the same, preserved in time like their memories. "Can you believe it's been 10 years?" Sofia asked, reaching across the table to take his hand. Gray now threaded through her own hair, and fine lines had appeared at the corners of her eyes, but Oliver looked at her the same way he had that very first night in his office. "Best 10 years of my life," he said simply, "though I think the next 10 will be even better." "You're 62, she pointed out. "I'll be 45 before you know it, and you'll still be the most beautiful, brilliant woman I've ever known." He lifted her hand to his lips. Age was never the issue, remember. It was just a number that scared us both before we realized love doesn't care about arithmetic. Sofia smiled, remembering that frightened young woman who'd worried about gaps and differences and what other people might think. She'd learned that real love transcended all of that, that partnership was built on respect and communication and choosing each other every single day. "I would do it all again," she said. "Every moment, every challenge, every doubt. I'd do it all again because it led me here to you, to this life we built together." "Me too." Oliver stood and pulled her to her feet, wrapping his arms around her right there in the middle of the cafe. "Here's to the next 10 years and the 10 after that, and however many we get." "I love you, Sofia." "I love you too," she whispered against his chest, feeling his heart beat steady and strong beneath her cheek. They'd taken a chance on each other despite all the reasons they shouldn't have worked. They'd chosen love over fear, connection over convenience, and built something extraordinary in the process. The millionaire and the cleaning lady had become husband and wife, partners and parents, proof that sometimes the best love stories are the ones that surprise you most. And as they walked out of that cafe hand in hand, Sofia knew with absolute certainty that she wouldn't change a single thing. The age gap that had once seemed so daunting had never mattered at all, not when weighed against the depth of what they'd found together. Some loves were meant to be, regardless of numbers or expectations or what the world thought should work. Theirs was one of those loves, tested and proven, stronger with each passing year. And that was the greatest gift of all.